For those of you who have never been here before, welcome. You're here on an amazing first visit, if this is your first visit, because as you will have noticed, those of you who came in through the administration building entrance, we have a brand new exhibit up, and it's still in the process of being put up finally. This event was conceived of as a bit of a sneak peek because we knew it would take us a while to mount. It's it's a different kind of exhibit than we've ever done before, as you're about to hear from the co-curator of this exhibit, Dr. Kerry Lane. But as the director of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center, my name is Dr. Dan Lesham, I can tell you that we have never done an exhibit like this that was entirely based around an authentic historical artifact, and especially not one of the historical uniqueness and significance of the one we have up now. And you'll hear more about that, so I don't want to go on too long, except to say you chose the right day for your first visit, if it is your first visit. I apologize, we had great sunny, cloudy days, and now the sun's beaming down. It's gonna be a little bit harder to see the screens. It's the price we pay for the beauty of this room. But I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Diane Call, the president of this college, who has supported this center from its inception and is a large part of the reason why we have such a beautiful room. And also, of course, we need to thank the National Endowment for Humanities that helped provide the seed funding and a matching for our endowment that has made this event and the whole event series. If you guys don't have this pamphlet, please pick it up at the end. This is all made possible thanks in large part to the support of the National Endowment for Humanities. And we have a series of events this year on the topic of fleeing genocide, displacement, exile, and the refugee. And for those of you who sometimes look at the news, and up to those of you who look every day, you know that these questions about the refugee, sometimes called migrants, sometimes really migrants, but oftentimes called that to avoid the ethical responsibility that goes along with considering the status of a refugee, that the numbers of refugees in the world are at an all-time high according to the UN, and this whole series of events that'll cover the whole year are really trying to analyze and get to the root of what is at the heart both of the experience of being a refugee and on the level of trying to support and provide shelter and comfort to refugees. Today's exhibit focuses on a very particular refugee, of the Holocaust, who started his life in Lithuania and ended his life, so to speak, right here around the corner in Nassau County in the small town of North Belmore. So I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to come down here today. This exhibit will be up starting today and until graduation. So any faculty who are considering your spring semester, it'll be up for the entire spring semester as well. The only other thing I'd say, we do have lots of events and opportunities to learn and get involved here at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. So in addition to picking up the flyer about this particular series, please pick up our events calendar. And finally, we just received yesterday the catalogs for the exhibit. So this is the book that has in it all the images and text that you'll see in, well, most of the text you'll see in the exhibit and in the slideshow. We'll have stacks of them in the back of the room afterwards for you to pick up on your way out. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Kerry Lane. He is assistant professor of English. He's been teaching here for about 7 years. He's a miraculous and wonderful instructor, as you can tell by the exhibit when we get there. His pedagogical focus and interest is exceeded by no other instructor I've ever met or worked with. He is also, for this year, the Curator-in-Residence here at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. And it's in that capacity that he's been working day and night since about April, gave up his entire summer, all focused to turning about 300 objects, these artifacts, turning 300 individual and distinct objects into the story of a life. And it was done with such care and such respect towards the survivor and his family that I'm truly in awe of what Dr. Lane has accomplished. And I invite you all to join me in welcoming him to the microphone.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Dr. Lesham. I am pleased to be here to discuss this new exhibit, The Jacket from Dachau, One Survivor's Search for Justice, Identity, and Home. I'm first going to give an overview of the exhibit and then describe the curatorial process of how we took this story and put it on the walls of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center and onto a website that will open in January, that will go live in January. And then I'd like to have an interactive segment with you where we actually go into the exhibit, and I can give you about 20 minutes to peruse and look at what we've done, and then come back and we can have a discussion about what we saw. So I'll talk for about 40 minutes, and we'll then go into the gallery for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back for a 15 or 20 minute question and answer and discussion, because I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you've seen. So before we begin, I first want to, of course, thank Dr. Dan Lesham, director of the Holocaust Center, both for his kind introduction and allowing me this really wonderful opportunity to curate and create a vision for this story. And you'll probably be able to tell certain stylistic decisions that were made to sort of enhance the story that I'm about to describe. And this was a very rewarding experience for me, and it was a lot of hard work, and that burden was shared by interns who I'll introduce to you next. Of course, I'd like to thank President Call and Vice President Zins, who's here, for allowing us to take some creative leaps in terms of the space and really kind of transform the Holocaust Center here into a global leader in its field. Of course, I have a chair, Dr. David Humphreys, chair of the English department, who allows his faculty members to contribute to the campus in very creative and diverse ways. And so I think thanks is due there. In fact, the NEH program coordinators, Dr. Eliza Attic, Dr. Kathleen Alves, and Dr. Myrna Lekic, who teaches in music, have all contributed to the campus in really wonderful ways. And so thanks to their chairs, Kip Montgomery and Dr. David Humphreys. Thank you. Lastly, in my thanks, I want to thank the interns I worked with all summer. And they were really peers. I sort of treated them like co-curators, where I would bounce ideas off of them. What do you think about this? I let them lead. I sort of distributed the sort of workload, and each intern had a strength that I was able to utilize in terms of building the exhibit, which we'll see. So I just wanted to name them. Alejandro Leal Pulido, Caitlin Cicciarello, Abigail Haije, Daniel Nussdorf, who's here. Daniel, can you stand up? I think applause is for Daniel. Peter Pandukis and Nitya Ramanathan. Before I describe the story of the jacket from Dachau and the curatorial process of creating the exhibit, I want to emphasize to the faculty and students here today that museums and galleries are perhaps the best learning venues that there are. These are one of the best places to learn. They're powerful catalysts for thought, reflection, research, reading, and writing. And in my 15 years teaching at CUNY, there has not been one semester where I have not used an exhibit of one kind or another in my teaching. So part of my duties as Curator-in-Residence is to help you, the students, and the instructors that are here use this exhibit in your curriculum and your pedagogy. So do not hesitate to call on me to help you construct curriculum or assignments. We have a LibGuide, that wonderful LibGuide that Mishan King, Mishan King and Leslie Ward have created, and they will come up and introduce that to you as well, which is another teaching tool. So when I curated this exhibit, I really kept the instructors and students in mind. We built a dedicated reflection and writing area in the exhibit, which you'll see, where students can respond to the content of the exhibit, either privately or through social media. The exhibit also has the LibGuide, which I talked about, and coming in January, we're going to have a very beautiful, wonderful, and rich website dedicated to the exhibit. So we have all these tools for you to learn with and explore with. Now to the exhibit itself. I'm going to begin by showing you a 7-minute film which will give you an overview of the story behind what the jacket is and how it got here. So Daniel, could you please show this film?
On a very typical weekend, my husband Richard, my daughter Gemma, and I went to an estate sale. I made my way upstairs to the bedroom, and in the closet were multiple racks of clothing. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a very distinct pattern. It was a pale blue-gray and a beige stripe, and that's when I noticed the rust-colored stains, the years of dirt, and a very distinct set of numbers. And I almost knew instantly what I had found. I was very good friends in high school with a woman named Marissa Berman Hollywood, and she was involved with a Holocaust center.
So I got this email from Jillian. I hadn't talked to her in a while, and I was really freaked out because in the email she had talked about how she had found this jacket, and she expressed that she thought it might have been a concentration camp jacket.
I first learned about the jacket shortly after Mrs. Eisman contacted our assistant director and had sent her some initial images along with some of the original research she had done.
I found a known database and I looked up the numbers, and it was traced back to a gentleman named Benzion Persetsky. He was a Lithuanian Jew who was sent to Kupferberg and liberated in 1944.
And we were able, with a little bit of imagination, to tie that name to the house where the coat had been found, which had been owned by a man named Ben Perez. Understanding how immigration worked at the end of the war and for the decades after, where many European names were shortened, we understood that this was probably the same person.
They were so excited about the jacket's existence and the possibility that there was more information out there. And I just knew that I was making the right decision.
When Jill first came here and brought the coat with her, I was stunned by the condition of the coat. After all, this is a 70-year-old garment, that I understood that this survivor wanted to make sure that this artifact outlived him, which it ultimately did.
And it was an unbelievable experience to have it here. As soon as she took it out of the plastic, it was just such a presence to feel exactly what it had been through.
It's a very unique experience to have an authentic piece of that genocidal history in your hands. It's remarkable the way material culture, objects and artifacts can transport us in ways that our imagination struggles without these kinds of props. And just looking at the coat, I was instantly transported, and its impact on me was tangible. I felt it in my skin and in my bones.
Dr. Lisham contacted the development department here at the college to see if we could find any descendants, if they were living, of Ben Perez.
We knew we wanted to reach out so that we could bring them into the story, because certainly it's their story as well. And using the email address they used to post the Craigslist ad for the estate sale, to reach out and ask her if in fact she was related to Benzion Persetsky. She replied right away and let us know that she was his daughter. I said, I have your father's concentration camp jacket from Kupferberg. The phone line went silent for a few minutes. Her first words to me were, is this a joke? And I explained that no, that we're here at the center and she could look us up. She confided in us that her father had passed away when she was 13 in 1978. She told me that she had never known that this object existed. She had never known that her father had kept his concentration camp jacket, even though it had been in their parents' closet in the bedroom she had grown up in.
She was so excited and so grateful that Jill had found it and had brought it to us. She was so happy to know that it was where it should be, that it would be preserved, and that other people would get to see it and understand how important that it really was.
So we set a time and she came to the center, and for the first time in her life, saw her father's concentration camp uniform from Calfring. It was really a remarkable moment.
It really means a lot to me that I had the opportunity to share this with the family and give them this memento that they didn't know existed.
This jacket represents a past that apparently her father also hid from her, for understandable reasons, during her own childhood. He hadn't shared with her about his experiences, so this father, whom she hadn't really known since childhood, was now reappearing in front of her eyes.
I think it's human nature to hope and pray for those unforeseen moments where someone can give you another viewing of your family member, of your loved one. So I'm really grateful to be able to do that for the Perez family.
In her excitement, she brought with her dozens of huge envelopes full of artifacts, letters, documentation, report cards, all these things from her father and her mother.
A wealth of documentation that, along with the coat, help us to tell the story of who her father was and what kind of a life he lived.
Which shined even more light on their experience and made the jacket even more human.
We had been very concerned about how the family would feel about the center holding the jacket. I quickly realized that she really valued the fact that the jacket had found its way here, where it could be preserved and used in education. And so she was very eager to give us the rest of the documentation and the photographs that she still had from her father, in the hopes and the expectation that we would help her to piece back together her father's story.
I know that I'm proud to be a part of this, and I think others will feel really strongly when they see the jacket and they see the rust-colored stains and the dirt and all the documents that go along with it, and understand that this was somebody's life. This is a lot of lives, and we can change things.
We hope in the next year to be able to also put together an exhibit featuring the coat and the life story of Ben and his mother. Artifacts, tangible material objects that students can look at from multiple angles, potentially hold in their hands, are invaluable. Looking at pictures, reading history books, even listening to the voice of survivors, students can oftentimes yearn for something tangible. And it touches on so many of the core purposes of this center, to trace the effects of historical genocide through our lives and through the world we live in today. The coat is a transformative object that transforms the space around it and provides anyone who comes near it an opportunity to look very closely into the past.
So Dr. Leschen called me in April of the coat was discovered on July 4th of last year, and Dr. Leschen brought me in April of this year to help curate the exhibit. So we've been very busy, as you saw from all these artifacts, to make sense of this entire story. And so this jacket is an incredibly powerful and symbolic artifact. But what we found was that there were so many other sub-narratives that we wanted to focus on in the exhibit, in addition to, that supplemented the jacket itself. I should also say that the marketing department here at Queensborough, Nick Cacchese and Phil Roncaroni, they filmed and edited this film, and it was so good that I decided to use them we have 4 other additional 6-minute films in the exhibit that contextualizes this story, both Ben Perez's childhood. We have a Lithuanian scholar who talks about, discusses the turmoil in Lithuania around World War II, before and after. We have a film with a psychologist to talk about Ben Perez's trauma that he had to deal with when he was liberated from his concentration camp. And we have another film with Gillian Eisman that really goes into much more detail about how she discovered the jacket and the fact that her brother was lost on 9/11 and her grandfather served in the Soviet army during World War II. And so she had to really connected experience, and it was like the perfect person found this jacket, this needle in a haystack, this very rare artifact. And I'll get into a little bit of those when I take you through the exhibit. A curator is a person who is in charge of the artifacts of a gallery or museum and is charged with interpreting those artifacts for the public. One of the challenges in curating this exhibit was to highlight all these complex themes that I just described. And this exhibit could have been strictly about the jacket itself, and that could have been enough. After all, it's extremely rare and powerful and highly symbolic. But what you'll find is we wanted to focus on these incredible sub-narratives in this story. The dynamic and complicated history of Lithuania, the perseverance of a Holocaust survivor through incredible hardships, including physical and emotional trauma that he endured at the hands of the Nazis, his tenacious search for justice through a decades-long reparations effort. So he saw justice through getting monetary compensation from the German government after the war, and this took many years, and it took a very determined effort to compile all the evidence that he needed to prove his case. His search for a new identity, despite his name being misspelled or changed no less than seven times in his life, and living under 7 separate governments or military powers over the course of 10 years before, during, and after World War II. His search for a new home. He was in exile, he was a refugee, he was a political prisoner, he was an immigrant. And it's also about the story of New York as a place where people come and after they survive, or in the case of 9/11, like Gillian Eisman, where terrorism comes to our shores too. So let me take you through the exhibit for 15 minutes. I'll just give you a quick overview. Then I'll talk a little bit about how we curated the exhibit with the interns that work with me. We'll show you the LibGuide that will help you study. And then we'll go into the exhibit itself. And none of these segments will take too long. I do want to get you into the exhibit so you can see firsthand what we did. And then I want to have a discussion with you when we get back. So we're ready to go here. Yeah. So what I'm going to show you is a PDF of the catalog, which we have out front. And everyone is welcome to take a copy as they go through the exhibit and when you leave. Most exhibits have a curator statement which gives an overview on the themes and the process. We have our curator statement both in the catalog and on the wall itself. Ben-Zion Perzetsky was born in Lithuania in 1926. That's his mother and father, who were born in 1895 and 1900. So we put a family tree in the exhibit. The mother and father are up top, Ben-Zion Perzetsky on the bottom left, that's his jacket we found, and his brother, Levi Icha Perzetsky, who did not survive the Holocaust. Ben-Zion's father died when he was, I think, 11 years old from a stomach ulcer in 1937. Ben-Zion's mother, Shiana Perzetsky, also survived the Holocaust. One thing you have to understand is Lithuania was one of the hardest hit countries in the Holocaust. Approximately 90% of the Jewish population was killed during the Holocaust from Lithuania. The fact that Ben-Zion Perzetsky and his mother, Shiana Perzetsky, both survived is, I think I did the math, it's 90 times 90, or it's very rare for two people to survive from the same family, but miraculously, the mother and the son survived, but Ben's brother tragically was killed. They grew up in a little town called Radviliškis, Lithuania, a town of about 20,000. It's currently the 4th largest city in Lithuania. Lithuania is a fairly small country with a small population, around 8 million now. The town was about 8% Jewish at the time, but most of 72% of the stores in Radviliškis were owned by Jews. So Ben-Zion Perzetsky's father owned 3 stores. He owned a wine store, a photography store, and a general store. And we have documents showing, in Lithuanian, showing what the names of their stores were. The Perzeki's small grocery store, the Perzeki's wine store, Perzeki's photo store. So they own 3 of the 42 stores in Radviliškis, Lithuania. We have documents in the exhibit that describe the killing of Benzaim Perzetsky's brother. It happened in the Einsatzgruppen, which were the Nazi murder squads, came into their town. They rounded up all the Jews who were in a barracks at the time. And on July 12th, 1941, all men 16 and older were taken to the woods near the Jewish cemetery of the town. All 300 men aged 16 and older were killed. Benzaim Perzetsky was 15 at the time. His brother was 17. So his brother was taken with the other men of the town. They dug a pit, and then local militia and the Nazis shot them to death. So here, Benzaim Perzetsky escapes death by just the fact that he was 6 months short of his 16th birthday. And here's a picture of one of the thousands of mass killings that happened, this one near the Šiauliai ghetto in Lithuania. This is a memorial that currently sits on the site of the mass killing of Benzaim Perzetsky's brother, Levi Yichak. During the reparations effort of Ben's mother and himself, the German government asked them to document how the brother was killed, how Levi Yichak was killed. They wanted proof that he was killed. This is one of the more powerful documents in the exhibit. This is a handwritten letter by Hiena Perzetsky, Benzaim's mother, stating, and I'm going to read it. Dear Dr. Levinson, thank you for your letter dated June 30th, 1956. I am very sorry to inform you that at present I cannot find anyone who was present at the killing of my son. It seems to me it is ridiculous to ask for such a statement since anyone present at the shooting was also shot to death. So this incredible task of documenting their suffering, where the lawyer in Germany is asking, the German government wants proof that your son was killed at this mass killing. And the mother's anger, saying, I can't prove that my son was killed in this murder pit because everyone who was there was also killed. And it's a very powerful document that we have highlighted in our exhibit, which you can see firsthand. Benzaim and his mother were moved to the Šiauliai ghetto, one of the major ghettos in Lithuania during World War II. Ghettos were cordoned off sections of cities where the Nazis could concentrate the Jews. There was not much food, not much employment, abuse, killing. So they lived in the Šiauliai ghetto for approximately 3 years before they moved to the Dachau, before Benzaim was moved to the Dachau concentration camp and his mother was moved to the Stutthof concentration camp in Poland. So here we have pictures of the Šiauliai ghetto. In the exhibit we have maps showing the movement of Ben and his mother through the Holocaust and the major concentration camp and ghetto sites. This is an 11-foot map in the exhibit. We wanted to highlight that how hard Lithuania was hit during the Holocaust in terms of the Jewish population. As I said, it was Jews comprised about 8% of the Jewish population in pre-war Lithuania, and today I believe it's 0.1%. To give you an idea, so approximately 90% of the Jews in Lithuania were killed during the Holocaust, which is the third highest of any country in Europe. Benzaim was 5'4" and about 150 pounds when he was moved to the Dachau concentration camp. Dachau had many subcamps. One of the subcamps was called Kupferberg, which is where he was sent. Kupferberg was a kind concentration camp that used prisoners as forced labor. They made bullets, bombs, munitions. They were working on V-2 rockets, flak. They built cement. They made cement. So it was a very grueling concentration camp. He was beaten by Nazi guards. He avoided death when the United States was closing in and almost liberating most of the concentration camps in Germany. The United States bombed. Ben-Zion was put on a train, on a death march, what they call, and the United States bombed this death march, and he almost was killed by American troops, not knowing that there were prisoners in the train, of course, but another level of survival for Ben, and it gives you an idea of how lucky he was to survive, as well as his mother. So we have pictures from inside the camp. Because they were making munitions, all the buildings were sort of low to the ground or subterranean to protect against Allied bombings, and they were camouflaged on top with dirt and grass so that aerial surveillance could not see the munitions production. We have an infographic describing the different types of uniforms that prisoners wore in various concentration camps throughout Europe during the Holocaust. Our jacket from Kaufering, Ben-Zion Perzetsky's jacket, is on the upper left. But we were able to research and describe what other concentration camp uniforms look like in 7 other concentration camps and extermination camps. And they vary. And most of the time, the jackets were made in the concentration camps themselves. When the Americans liberated Dachau in April of 1945, they took the commandant of Kaufering and they forced him to stand amongst the corpses. This was both evidence as well as maybe a little vindication of the U.S. troops to shame the commandant here. His name was Eichelsdorfer. Eichelsdorfer was convicted a year later at an American, I don't know what you would call it, a Landsberg, a camp that was, after the Marshall Plan was established by the Americans, where they conducted trials of war criminals. He was convicted and he was hanged a year after this picture was taken of him. But you see all the jackets, and prisoners' uniforms that the victims were wearing. Pictures of the American troops liberating Kaufering. The mother was sent to a concentration camp called Stutthof in northern Poland, northwest Poland. And so we have the roll book from her, listing her as one of the prisoners at Kaufering, which is on the walls of the exhibit. After the Holocaust, Ben-Zion Perzetsky had nowhere to go. His family, his friends, his community in Lithuania had been decimated. He never went to high school because when he was taken to the when he was taken to the Shalau ghetto, he was 15 years old. And by the time he got out, when the Holocaust was over and World War II was over, he was 20 years old. He never had gone to high school. So displaced persons camps were sites where prisoners could get their life back. They could get an education, job training, get their health back. They were starved. Often people met their wives or husbands at these displaced persons camps. So Ben-Zion was at a displaced persons camp for 5 years before he came to the United States, and he received all of the above. He didn't meet his wife there, but he got job training, he recovered, he rested. Here are pictures of the job training that happened in the Landsberg displaced persons camp. Here's documents from the Landsberg displaced persons camp, which we have on the walls in the exhibit. Pictures of the recovery, getting their life back, recovering from this incredible trauma. He got his GED, so this is a diploma on the right-hand side. So it's a high school equivalency diploma on the right-hand side. And he's smiling. He's happy to be alive. And you'll find that Ben is smiling in many of the pictures, and this is part of his perseverance and his resilience. despite the trauma. And we're going to get into a little bit about how he endured all of this. But you'll find that the courage that he shows through these pictures of him after the war, where he's with his children and he's posing for a picture on vacation, and you would never know what he endured. So in 1949, 1950, they immigrated to the United States. They had an uncle called Izzy Dubler who lived in Brooklyn, I believe Crown Heights, Brooklyn, who sent a letter to Germany saying, yes, I will host my family here. And they were able to move in with Uncle Izzy in 1950. The irony of the United States, who liberated Dachau and Kupferberg and with help of allies beat the Nazis, is that there was a Displaced Persons Act here that sort of had embedded a little bit of discrimination into it in terms of accepting displaced persons into the United States. Here, a letter from Harry Truman admonishes the Displaced Persons Act of the United States. So there's these little pieces of irony in here, that here is America who sort of helped win the war and beat the Nazis, and yet we had laws on our books that sort of limited who came to the United States and how and when. And we see this a little bit now with the refugee crisis. How many refugees should we take? And certain countries have better policies or more just policies than others. And so that's something, for those of you studying that, there's a parallel here. So in New York City, he met his wife. He was set up. It wasn't an online date, but it was a setup where a family friend, Esther Ann Coley, wrote a friend of hers, Chaya was her name, and said, I have a wonderful man I think you should meet. His name is Ben Perez. And so they met and they got married. Make no mistake, Ben Perez suffered after the Holocaust, and he sought treatment for this. He saw psychologists and psychiatrists and took medicine to cope with the trauma that he endured. And I think that's extremely courageous on his part, because think about now, we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. In the 1950s and 1960s, for a man to sort of say, you know what, I need help coping with this, I thought was extremely brave. We have an interview with a psychologist, Dr. Eva Fogelman, in the exhibit, who discusses in detail, who specially is helping survivors of the Holocaust with post-traumatic stress disorder. She goes into great detail about Ben Perez's case and the courage with which and the tenacity with which he was able to survive despite his trauma during the Holocaust. So this was all part of his reparations effort. He had to prove to the German government, I suffered this. My brother was killed. My mother lost her job. I was beaten. So he had to show all these documents about how much he paid for his medicine to cope with his anxiety, how much he paid for doctors, how much the mother paid for doctors because she had a broken shoulder during the Holocaust. All of this had to be proven to the German government during the reparations effort, and we have these documents in our gallery. And they did receive reparations. I counted and I did a little Deutschmarks to US dollars, adjusting for inflation. They got about $20,000 to $25,000 in reparations payments in modern day dollars from the German government. And that money was enough money to put a down payment on a house after living in various locations in New York City, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, in these apartments. And Ben and his mother were together the whole time. They were able, with this reparations money, in a small, I think, symbolic justice here, that they were able to finally buy the first home since Lithuania in Long Island, in North Belmore, Long Island, a 20-minute drive from here. And the mother lived with him, with his wife, and now 2 children, Lori and Michael. Ben kept his jacket with him throughout each of his moves, through the displaced persons camp, through the apartment with Uncle Lizzie in Brooklyn. They moved to the Upper Manhattan in Washington Heights. Then they moved into the Riverdale in the Bronx. He moved to Belmore, Long Island. He kept the jacket with him each and every one of these moves. And one of the things I want to discuss with you after we take a look at the exhibit is, why did he hold on to this jacket when so many survivors didn't want to see them or burn them or left them? But Ben held on to his, and he kept it in his closet it was in his closet when it was discovered for 70 years, and 37 years after his death. And he never told his children that his prisoner's uniform from Dachau was in his closet. He kept it to himself. He did not want to burden his children with his suffering. But he held on to it all the same. And I want to talk to you as you go through the exhibit. I want you to think about that. Why did he hold on to this very traumatic symbol, And I have my thoughts. Dr. Fogelman, the psychologist, has her thoughts, and I want to hear what yours are. After we tour the exhibit, I want to have a discussion with you. So there the jacket sat. So one thing I want to say is, before we move, I want to quickly talk about how I curated this exhibit with help of the interns, some from the English department, some from art and design. But Ben Perez died at age 52 in 1978. And he died during the ceremony of his daughter's bat mitzvah. Well, he had suffered a stroke. I think he died a couple days later, but he suffered a stroke during his daughter's bat mitzvah ceremony. And the jacket sat in his closet after his death for 37 years until it was discovered last year on July 4th by Jillian Eisman. And now it's here in our halls. So Daniel, let's take a look at the PowerPoint, and I'll show one of our other interns is here, Abigail Haye. Can you stand up and say hi to everybody? She was an integral part of helping write the content that you're going to see both on the walls and in the catalog. So every intern had sort of a different skill set that we all borrowed ideas from each other and worked together. And I want to show you that process, and I'll take 10 minutes. We'll take a look at our LibGuide, so the librarians will come up, and then we'll walk the halls and take a look at this exhibit. So this is the house in 2000. Well, Dan Lesham and I took this picture. We visited the house. We knocked on the door, and we asked permission from the new owner if we could take pictures. We interviewed Jillian Eisman, who discovered the jacket, and we have a video of her detailed account of what that's like to find something like this, and the other narratives that come, because her brother was killed on 9/11 and her father served in the Soviet army during World War II. And these threads of the person who's finding the jacket, who has a deep connection with tragedy and trauma, knowing how important an artifact can be to educate and for recovery or to coping for the family. So this was a very sort of heartfelt and wonderful interview that we conducted. There's Abigail on the right, that's me on the left. When Abigail found the jacket, she put it in the trunk of her car. She couldn't believe it. She took a picture of it. This was the house in 1968. So Dan Lesham and I, we visited. This is Lori Zullo. This is Ben Perez's daughter. And she gave us hundreds and hundreds of documents. And this is all very overwhelming for her. This is a lot to take in. She didn't know that the jacket or these documents even existed. So she's sharing with us family photos that we have enlarged on video screens, and we sort of recreated the inside of the home. This is a humble little house that they bought with a reparations payment from the German government. But one that was theirs, and one they could raise their kids in peace. And he only got to live there for about 10 years until he died. They bought it in 1968. He died in 1978. So Dr. Lesham and I and our 5 interns, we this was an overwhelming amount of material to make sense of. And it started by itemizing what we had and measuring the walls and coming up with colors and creating a motif of what this exhibit should look like. So we were constantly saying, what color should this be? How big should it be? How much money do we have? What if we enlarge this image? What text should belong with what? How should we start this? We ended up with a chronology. We started in Lithuania in 1900, and we end with the discovery of the jacket in 2015. So when we're in the gallery, look for the timeline to guide you. So we're measuring here, where should the jacket go in this space? Our centerpiece. We had to take photographs of the jacket for the catalog. We had to measure it in terms of how are we going to display it? In glass, how big should the glass be? So whenever we handle the jacket, we use white gloves. We interviewed a Holocaust survivor who I don't know, I guess he's a member of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. He comes in and he talks to students occasionally, and he and his son. He survived Kaufering. He didn't know Ben Zion Perzetsky at Kaufering, but we were able to interview him and get a very good idea what daily life was like at Kaufering, and it wasn't good. So we have a video of Sam Wadowski, a survivor of the same concentration camp that Ben Zion Perzetsky survived. There's Nick Kachese filming, and he edited all the films, the one you saw and the ones that are in the exhibit. There's one of our English interns, Abigail Hijay, setting up the exhibit, helping Mr. Wadowski with his cane. He's 91 years old. And Ben Zion Perzetsky, his birthday, he would be 90 years old this Friday. He would have turned 90 years old. And so Sam Wadowski is a year or two older than Ben. We had to compile all of our artifacts, organize them, scan them, make sense of it all. What do we use? What do we not use? We had to whittle it down. This process is a very laborious process. It first started with understanding what we had and then writing about what we had. We did a lot of research. We used historians to help us with both research and fact-checking. We had a Lithuanian scholar come in. We sent our material to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, so our facts, for fact-checking, to make sure that we were accurate. And all this took time. And so we were working very hard over the summer. We wanted to research other concentration camp uniforms, so that's what you're looking at here. We had about 1,000 family slides that Ben Perez's daughter gave us, and so we had to look through each one. And we found the easiest way to look through all these slides is to hold them up to the light. And so we spent about 4 hours. We had all the slides. We ordered some pizza, and we just looked through every slide to see which slide we could use in the exhibit and which we couldn't use. So when we walk into the exhibit, it seems like, oh, it's very clean, everything's where it should be. It took a lot of eliminating and editing to get to this point where everything is sort of focused. That was a fun day. When we found some wonderful photographs of the family after liberation. And you're using these old slide projectors. Jesse in academic computing he had to bring up all these. We had an 8mm films. We had old slides. We had to use this old hardware to sort of see what we had. Leo, the photographer here in marketing, we needed to photograph the exhibit. So we wanted to simulate the jacket in the closet for the cover of the catalog, the jacket that sat for 70 years in Ben Perez's closet in Europe, in New York City, and in Long Island. And so I brought in a bunch of in fact, my jacket's probably in the one, I brought in like 6 of my jackets from my closet and put them next to Ben Perez's jacket, and we photographed, and we sort of got the cover that you saw earlier. And, the marketing team and all the assistants we got, not just the interns, but marketing, academic computing, were all so helpful. We had to decide how we wanted to house the jacket itself. So we had to measure. We didn't want it too high. We didn't want it too low. We wanted a pedestal. We didn't have the bottoms of, in Kaufering, prisoners were given a top and a bottom. We didn't have the bottom. So what do we do with the legs? We decided to use a pedestal, both for reverence. Okay. So let me just show you quickly the concept we had in terms of the color of the walls. And we came up, we wanted to pull the blue from the jacket and the gray from the jacket in terms of our color motif, as well as to create, so we use some paint swatches here. And so you'll see in the catalog and on the walls, and on the website, we have a consistent color motif, this antique rust, because of mimicking the stitching on the jacket, and the gray from the jacket and the blue. So we have this consistency throughout the walls and in the catalog and on the website. So this is us constructing the exhibit. This was this weekend, actually, where we went from white walls to our timeline stripe to our color motif to putting up our infographics and images. And the wall vinyl you see is very meticulously put on and very expensive, but it has a really clean and wonderful look. I'm going to invite the librarians to show you the LibGuide for 5 minutes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to walk into the gallery, and I want you guys to go into the exhibit. We'll then return for a quick discussion and question and answer. So I want to invite Mi-Sean Kim and Leslie Ward to come up and show you, Daniel, if you could get the LibGuide, the website. You're welcome.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So I'm Leslie Ward. I'm one of the librarians here at QCC.
I'm Mi-Sean Kim.
And what Dr. Lane, Dr. Lesham, myself, and Mi-Sean Kim, what we all sort of agreed on was that we wanted the LibGuide to be something that everybody could use, so the public, students, faculty, staff, everything. So what we tried to include was the events, obviously, and the curator statement will be front and center, so you know exactly what's going on and what this exhibit's about. But then also the themes. Each theme has a drop-down menu, so each one has its own individual page, so there are individual resources for each theme, including justice and home and identity. And then we also have research and writing questions that can help to prompt you in your research. And then I can't see the reflection. And then resources for other research, writing tips, and then the maps that you see and the infographics that you see, as well as other maps and infographics in other places. Do you want to talk about the maps?
Yeah. If you have any questions, you have to write an assignment or for personal interest, and you don't know where to start, and you can just browse through our LibGuide. LibGuide is, of course, located on the QCC library homepage, and qcc.libguides.com/thejacket. And so anybody who is interested, you don't know where to start, then you can browse through. Of course, if you have any questions and you don't know how to find books, how to find sources, of course, we are available, Leslie and I. Or you can just come to the library at the reference desk, ask a librarian. That's, way to do it. And do we have any keyboard or? No? Yeah, you can, when you go to the maps and infographics, it's really, really interesting, I found. The first one on the map, on the first one on the list, map of the Jewish communities of Lithuania. Yeah, it's the vast amount of information available, and it's fun to click. When you just click one of these area, and you can see a lot of sources. It links to other sources, and I think it's fun to do it. So I just wanted to show it to you. Okay, so that's it. I mean, anything that helps you to study or have some fun, for yourself, then you can use it. Thank you.
So before we go into the gallery and come back for discussion, so I'm a resource both for students and faculty members who want to embed this exhibit into their curriculum. The librarians are a resource, and they can be embedded also in your class. Let's take 15 minutes to go into the gallery, experience the exhibit firsthand, and then I'm very interested in you coming back and we'll have a discussion about what you saw, and we can have a question and answer as well for things, for any questions you might have. Okay, so we'll meet back here in 15 minutes. I'll be in the gallery if you have questions. The interns will be in the gallery. Don't hesitate to call upon us.